Well, what is going on, everyone? How you guys doing? Thought we'd just go live here for a little bit. We'll give it a couple minutes to allow people to jump in and see what we come up with today. Kind of a sneak attack on you guys again. So let's see who jumps in here. Adjust this a little bit. You guys never know when I'm going to go live, so I never know when I'm going to go live. And of course, as soon as I go live, Ernie calls in. Give it a couple of minutes. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Parabot. Nice. What's happening? How are you? Happy Friday. Got a couple cool things to talk about today. Hope you guys like it. We'll just give it a couple of minutes because, like I said, I did a sneak attack on you guys again today, and I didn't give anybody any any warning that I was coming on. So I figured we'll just give it a couple of minutes for folks to jump in, and we'll go from there. Saturday in Oz, yeah, nice. It'll be Saturday here back in the States tomorrow, but very cool. Hope you're having a good Saturday, Parabot. Definitely hope you're having a good Saturday. Like I said, I didn't even know I was actually going to do a show today. I just ended up having a cancellation of a meeting, and then I said, all right, we'll do something that I kind of was looking to do actually a week ago, and I couldn't do it. So I figured Friday afternoon would be kind of a cool time to do it. But anyways, all right, we'll just jump in, and whoever jumps in can rewind and go back and watch the video. So Parabot, it is looks like it's you and me right now. So awesome. All right, well, for those of you that are jumping in late or watch this video at a later time, I figured we would talk about the year 1994 going into 95 and then into early 96, which was one of my favorite Van Halen era's sound and guitars and just kind of style, I guess. Now, maybe not favorite for the band because Eddie was having hip problems, Alex had a neck problem. It was getting to that stage where Sammy was kind of starting to have a fallout with the band, and but really I think in my opinion, they created some of their most incredible sound during that time, the Balance era. That's my favorite sound. I love the early stuff and the obviously the Roth stuff and in the 80s, and then the Hagar stuff and whatever. But the Balance sound just was very huge and majestic. So what I figured we'd do today is kind of rewind back 20 years or so. Well, 25 years now actually. Go back about 25 years and talk about the guitars he was using back then, the sound that he was getting, and go from there. But before we jump back too far, I want to show you guys something that we'll be talking about really, really soon. All right, and yeah, Balance did reach #1. You're right. All the Hagar era albums they hit #1. It was a more melodic time for the band. And I'm not slamming the Roth era at all. It's great music. It's just that I think the Hagar era was more. Eddie never liked the word pop, but it was more melodic era, and Balance was actually a very heavy album, and it still reached #1. But songs like "Can't Stop Loving You" and songs like that, I think were very, very listener friendly. But I want to thank Chris Hubbard for this. This is my 1984 replica guitar that I just had redone. Mr. Bean, what's going on, buddy? How are you? This is my 1984 guitar that Chris Hubbard just redid, the body. I had the neck myself. I did the neck myself. It's an updated model. We're going to be going through guitars of the 5150 tour next week. And then after that, we're going to do guitars of the Fair Warning tour. So you'll be seeing the 5150, the Steinberger, this one here, the 1984. It's got the correct neck plate. It's got the B4186 plate, which was the number was. It's just a real cool guitar. It's definitely the best replica I've had of the 84. It's got the Steinberger knob on it. So we'll be seeing this guitar really soon when we do the 5150 video. And then we'll be talking about the fair warning guitars. We'll be doing a fair warning show. And we'll be talking about the Rude guitar, the Rude Weird Shapes. This is a cool one. We'll be talking about, this isn't really a fair warning, well actually it is a fair warning guitar, but it's a diver down paint job. But this was actually the Circles guitar before. So we'll talk a little bit about the Rasta Strat. Because it was in the fair warning tour, it just wasn't that color. It was this color. And this is actually a new guitar for me. This was the Circles guitar. And for those of you that don't know, the neck on this guitar is on the Frankenstrat right now. This is the guitar, the neck that was on the Circles guitar, the Bye See You Later guitar. That is the neck that is on the Frankenstrat today, because it's got Schaller double tabs on it. It's got all those extra holes. Mr. Carr, what's going on? So for those of you that don't know, the guitar that's on the Frankie today in the Met, and has been on it for years, is the neck that was on the Circles guitar. All right? That's a fact. So, we'll be doing a fair warning sound and guitar show soon. But today, for those of you that want to tune in, let's jump right into balance. So let's just see who we got here. We got Parabot, he's been here. Johnny Bean jumped in. Jimmy Carr, what's going on? Good to see you. So, got kind of a balance haircut going on now. A little bit of blonde highlight. Figured I'd try that. I haven't done that in like 3 years, so figured it'd be kind of fun. And I got the balance shirt on, so that's cool. Lazarin, what's going on? Last Foreigner. Good day. Good day. Okay, so let's jump into it. So the year is I'm just gonna plug this thing in here. The year is 1994. All right, and the band came off their Right Here, Right Now tour with their album. Chad, what's up, buddy? And they start writing this music, and now the story goes, Eddie cuts his hair and goes through a big change. They had, I think Ed Leffler, their manager, had passed away, so they were kind of held up in the studio, and they're writing this music. And they really wrote some really heavy riffs, 94 going into 95. Seventh Seal, Don't Tell Me, Aftershock, big, heavy, majestic riffs, And we'll talk about Ed's sound in a little bit, but they put this album out in '95, and I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember when it first came out, but I remember buying it on cassette when it first came out. My ex-wife and I were still dating, and I remember I was like, okay, Van Halen album came out, and I got it. I was like, whoa, that is awesome. I fell in love with it right away. I love the sound. So, 1995, we're seeing Ed. He's looking like this, and look what he's got. He's got his trusty Music Man. He had this strap in '95. It's kind of an interesting strap. It said it was an Ernie Ball strap, but this isn't the one I wanted to show you. But there's one that he had in later of '95, and it was it said 5150 on it, but it was the same kind of strap. It had the big beard thing going, with the blonde hair, the highlights, and everything. But he was still using his main Ernie Ball Music Man guitar. And this got a couple cool picks in it. Just show you real quick. It'll kind of carry into what we're talking about. Where is it? Here we go. Just some really neat stuff. So picture Ed. And you can see the headstock of his Ernie Ball guitar. It's all kind of chewed up, beat up a little bit. Because this guitar had been being used since '91. So now we're into like year 5. Now the set list on balance with the Seventh Seal, Can't Stop Loving You, Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, Amsterdam, Big Fat Muddy, Strung Out, Not Enough, Aftershock, Doing Time, Lucia Theorem, Take Me Back, Feeling, and there was an extra song that only made the Japanese cut called Crossing Over, which is really awesome sound, awesome song, and a lot of people haven't heard it, but it never made the American cut. It was very different. But you got your heavy songs like Seventh Seal and Don't Tell Me, which had a big, statement to them. I mean, Kurt Cobain had just passed away, tragic suicide thing. So there was some elements of that in there with Don't Tell Me, and Seventh Seal. You had Amsterdam, which was incredible music. Eddie and Al really didn't like Sammy's lyrics because it alluded to drug use and things like that. But it was a real fun song, great riffage. Can't Stop Loving You was a real kind of a radio-friendly hit, real good sound, good lyrics, kind of cool. There was a drum solo, with Doing Time with Alex. They had the strung out thing where Ed was doing the weird stuff on that piano of the gentleman, I guess, that him and Val had vacationed at years ago. Lucia Theorem, which was just a real heavy riffage guitar sound, kind of like a guitar and drum solo together that they chose not to put lyrics on. Really didn't need it. Feeling, which was kind of a heavy song too. I mean, that's a very interesting song, like if you were depressed or something like that, kind of talks about some of that stuff. And then Crossing Over. Big Fat Money, interesting song, not really one of my favorites, but really cool guitar. And Not Enough, which was a piano song, which was kind of a more, love type song, love walks in type sound, but really interesting. A lot of variety on that album. So there's a cool pic of Ed, in the studio, 5150. Again, he was, the music man, the amber one. The quilt top was his main guitar. And here, it's kind of a cool pic. Kind of shows you the Ernie Ball Music Man, the original one, and you can see the D-tune on it. All right, kind of interesting. You can see the D-tune on Ed's. Now, remember, Ed's original Music Man didn't have a signature on the headstock because it was a prototype, and also had a route under the Floyd. And then there's you can't tell, but that's actually a green Music Man right there. It's not black, it's actually a green one. Pretty cool. So, the album comes out, they go on tour. I think they started tour in March, and let's talk first about the sound they had. Well, first off, actually, we'll get into the D-tune in a second, but the sound that they had in Balance was a very huge, sound. Again, it's very similar to the Right Here, Right Now sound. It's, it's got a lot of harmonizer on it. It's got a lot of heavy chorus, a lot of, real cool delay. It's got that real kind of big variety delay sound, It's a little bit different. I mean, it sounds, OU812 has a little bit of elements of Balance in it. If you really listen to OU812, you can hear the chorus, you can just kind of hear the chorus. But the thing that Balance had, and I'm not playing through my wet rig, I'm playing through my little Yamaha, but I got it dialed into a Brown 2 sound, which sounds actually pretty cool. And we'll talk about how you can achieve that sound. What Eddie had going on is he had a D-tune effect going on, and that was actually achieved through his Eventide harmonizer. And he was using the Roland, I forget the actual model, but he was using Roland delay units, which he'd been using for years prior to that. And again, the Balance sound is very, very similar to the Unformed Lawful Carnal Knowledge sound, except it's just a little bit more processed. All right. And again, I mean, you can hear it when he cranks in the Seventh Seal. It's very big and majestic. And actually, I'll just play a little snippet here of some of it. Now, this is actually live in I think it's Belgium or something like that. It's you can find that on YouTube. Listen to the sound. kind of funny because Sammy's actually playing that song again live with the with the circle and mic. But you can just really hear how big it is. And you can hear. It's just real big, you know, and very huge sounding. A lot of people really don't like that sound out of Van Halen because it is a very processed sound. How he's achieving that is the Eventide harmonizer that he's using is actually set to a detune sound. So you're getting a certain amount of sense out of one side of his wet system and another. I say sense because it's dialed in. They go by sense. I don't know what it is. I'd have to look at my Eventide because I have it dialed in similar to that. But his delay is dialed in to a certain set on the left side of his wet system, and then it's dialed into a different type of a delay on his other side of on the right side of his wet system. So basically, what that means is he's got a delay coming out of the left side going bop 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 bop, and the delay coming out of the right side is going bop 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 bop. So what that does is it creates a pinging effect. All right, so that's how he's getting that big, huge delay. That's how he's getting that big, huge delay sound. And it doesn't really sound great out of that, but you can get that sound on a mono system out of a solid-state amp with just like a Boss DD3 delay. It's easy to get that kind of sound, that type of a delay anyways. But when you add it into the mix of a huge arena-type setting like Eddie was using, that you get that big, majestic sound. Now, as far as the detune sound, what that was like we said, it was a harmonizer, and what that's doing is it's offsetting you've got like two different types of a chorus. And a harmonizer is almost like it's like a heavy chorus. It's the same idea, but it's a little bit different. And again, when you're running it into a wet, dry, wet system, it gives you a very huge stereo sound. And the 5150 chorus pedal that is out there now does a pretty good job of it, but I still swear by my Boss PS6 Harmonist because that actually has a detune setting in it. It's really huge. And we'll go over my wet, dry, wet system in a little bit. But anyway, so the sound that he was getting was really cool. Now, again, if you listen to songs like, if you listen to Ain't Talking About Love, I mean, there's a classic Van Halen sound. This is from the Balanced era, and listen how big this sounds. It's the same thing. Hear the flanger right there. That's part of the song right there. And if you listen to the middle part of the song, of the breakdown, when he kicks in, when he goes to that clean sound, you can really hear the harmonizer. There we go. You can really hear it in the clean part. Look at this. So there's something you get right out of that. That's, in my opinion, that's pretty impressive. You get that real huge, majestic sound. So again, and I really loved it when Hagar would sing some of the Roth songs because he just gave it a little bit more melody. But anyways, so that's kind of how he's getting that sound. It was a harmonizer with different delays going to each side, and he was tweaking some other things back then too. And it's funny because then in 1998, everything changed. Everything changed around. And, you didn't have, the Van Halen 3 sound was totally different. All right, let's just see what we got here for questions. David Ennis, how you doing? Quentin James, how's it going? Good to see you. A couple of you guys have jumped in here ever since. Johnny says, Crossing Over was the B-side to Can't Stop Loving You. Yes, correct. And again, that's a great song. Great, great, great song. Crossing over. I'm just gonna plug my. I'm just gonna plug this iPad in here so I don't run out of juice. Let's see. Let's move this over just a little bit because I don't want this thing to die here right in the middle of our video. There we go. All right. So, back to the sound. So that was the type of sound he was getting, and I don't really think Eddie was totally comfortable with that sound. I think he liked it, but that was a very short-lived sound. If you go back in Van Halen history and you look at the sound off the first album, which was more Ted Templeman in the studio kind of chose how that was, because Eddie always said he never liked that sound. And then you get into Van Halen 2, Women for Children First, Fair Warning, Diver Down. Every album from the Roth era has a little bit different sound to it. It's a little bit different because Eddie was always searching for that, exact sound. He was never really happy with everything, He was always changing things and tweaking things. So when he goes with the Ernie Ball guitars back in '91, which we're going to get into here in a minute on the guitars, he changed everything around, and he starts adding this big, huge, sound, with Pound Cake and all that stuff. He's just got that, he's got that big, huge sound, and everybody was like, whoa, that's a different sound for Ed. It was still Ed, but it was different. It was bigger. And, like I said, he changed it a little bit in balance. He still had that big, heavy, processed kind of sound. Like I said earlier, which a lot of people didn't like. I really liked it because I think it's a very powerful sound. And then '98 came around and he completely changed everything again, sound-wise. We went back to, he got rid of the cordless units and he went back to using cables. And then you didn't hear anything from him until, album-wise or touring-wise, and you didn't hear anything until '04. And even in '04, not getting into how the tour went and everything like that, it was a different sound. And then '07, the 5150 threes were just kind of coming out, and it was a different sound then. And then 2012 was a little bit different, and then 2015, it changed even again a little bit. If anything to me sounds the closest to balance since then has been 2015. That would be the closest I've heard. But he's never really got back to that sound. Everything's a little bit more raw as time goes on. He kind of gets back to the basics. So I don't think Eddie really totally cared for that sound back in balance because he's never gone back to it totally. I really would love to hear it again because for such a great player like Eddie, it just sounds really huge. If you guys ever want to check out a good video, check out the Toronto '95 video, which most of you have probably seen. You can see it on YouTube. I mean, just incredible sound. So, that's kind of what he was doing. Now, for those of you guys that want to kind of get that type of a balanced sound, I mean, you can do the wet, dry, wet system where you have a dry cab in the middle, and you're powering, two different amps or two different cabs with a power amp and all that. So we can do that. And what you basically would want to do is get a delay pedal like a Eventide Time Factor or something like that can send two different delays to each side. And then I would highly recommend the Boss PS6 Harmonist because that just is that's like balance in a box. It's an awesome little pedal. And I actually prefer it over the 5150 Chorus because it just has a little bit more. It can do a little bit more if you're looking for that kind of sound. Whereas the 5150 Chorus is awesome, but that gives you more of like a diver down chorus sound, which is also cool. And then basically what you do is you have two separate delays going to the wet cabs on the side, and then you have your harmonist going to both of those sides, and then your cab in the middle, which is basically powering everything. That's dry, so that's what wet, dry, wet is. Now that's if you really want to go all out. If you really just want to get this type of a sound, on a poor man's account, so to speak, basically, any type of an amp, I mean like a 5150 combo or 5153 combo. Any type of a good crunchy sound, out of an amp will kind of get you that. Any amp that has a good distortion sound. And basically, I mean, you can do it with a Boss DD3, dial in that, that type of a delay, the big delay sound, and the PS6 Harmonist set at the D-tune. And I mean, I can't tell you how many people over the years go, "What are you playing through? What are you playing through?" And that was when I was just using that little Marshall practice amp. It just sounds really cool. So that's how you can kind of achieve that sound, if that's something you want to play with. Let's just see if we got any questions here. Yeah, the 3 sound was more raw. A lot of different tones on that. And it's funny because I hated that sound. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really like that sound back in '98. I was very like, it's too raspy. But it's funny because as time goes on, I'm kind of developing more of an appreciation for it. I'm just listening to some 3 albums the other day, some live stuff, and I was like, whoa, that is pretty cool. Yeah, why does he look like he leaves the pickup switch in the neck pickup? I always thought it was the bridge pickup. Eddie is a bridge pickup guy. Now, if you're seeing this is your bridge pickup on the Music Man's. This is your neck, okay? Eddie was famous for, all of his lead stuff was all in the bridge, okay, bridge pickup. And he would switch to the neck in a lot of his solo, not all of them, but some of his solos he would. And when he did Cathedral, he would switch sometimes to the neck pickup because it gave him more warmer kind of a sound. So he definitely was. He definitely was a bridge pickup guy. But again, that's actually a good point. We're going to get into that. When Eddie went with the Music Man's, 7/8, what's up, Jay? How you doing, buddy? When Eddie went with the Music Man guitars in '91, it was a total different change than than the Kramers he had been. This isn't the one, this is just the hard rock one, giveaway guitar, but it was a total different change from these guitars. It was something totally different, and Eddie was just like, all right, let's try something different, let's mix it up. So he goes Music Man, and of course Music Man right off the bat, they throw him a Strat style guitar all striped up, and Eddie's like, no, that's not what I want. And there's some really cool pictures out there. Johnny, Jay, and Dave know what they are, but there's some cool pics of some prototypes, Music Man's that came out, pictures of Ed, Dudley Gimble and things like that. Pretty cool. But basically this is what they came up with. All right, they came up with this guitar. Ernie Ball Music Man guitar. Finally had a neck pickup, so now Eddie was, experimenting with neck pickup sounds and things like that. But technically he would only use them in his solos. 1 volume knob. Floyd Rose type tremolo. On Eddie's guitar, it actually was a Godot bridge, and I've pretty much done that to mine. I have a Godot bridge on mine, no tone knob, just a volume knob. So and it had the eye bolts on it with the welds and the set screws and all that. So it was pretty much the same type of thing, and it was really a great guitar. Very, very good guitars, very well made. I mean, this is my amber one. It's an EX, but I've got it, I pretty much got it all eddied out. But it is a real Music Man. It's just an EX Japanese model, which we've talked about before. So Eddie starts playing this guitar in '91. Then he does it in '92, 91, 92, the '93. And then by balance, he's just, this is his main guitar. This is his baby right here. And he was playing purple ones too. He had a main purple one. He had a whole ton of Music Mans. He had red ones, green ones, black ones, amber ones, purple, you just name it. Eddie had, I think one of the articles I read, Eddie back in the early 90s and the 95, he probably had like 50 Music Man guitars. But this was his baby. This was the baby. And at the time, they, on Eddie's original one, had an original Floyd Rose, and it actually had a route. Underneath the bridge, which the regular Music Mans don't. And that was because they were looking at using Schaller type Floyd Rose bridges, and the Schaller type Floyd Rose and the real original Floyds, they would actually dig into the wood. So that's why they kind of, with the knife edge in the front when you would use the bar, would dig into the wood, so that they put a route in there. Then when they went with the Music Man bridges, which were made by Godot, they have a slanted knife edge, so they didn't need to do the route anymore. That's why the production model Music Mans don't have that. Okay. So one other thing real quick, Adam Reaver, good friend of mine, real good guy. Some of you guys know him. F.U. Tone, awesome guy, got a lot of good stuff. He's the designer of the D-Tuna. He's the one that came out with the D-Tuna back in, believe it or not, 1993. These were around before the PV Wolfgangs came out. We just didn't see them yet. Eddie got his first prototype D-Tuna towards the end of the Right Here, Right Now tour in '93, and he was using it. And he was using it all through '94. And for some of you guys with a keen eye, if you really look at close pictures of Eddie's guitars and balance, he had one that looked very much like this. This is not black. This is, and it's not chrome. This is a real one. This isn't a prototype. But the prototype D-Tunas that Eddie had at that time, they were a little shorter than the production ones, and they were more of a charcoal type finish. So what I did with this one is it's a black one, and I took some sandpaper and I just scrubbed it and took the heavy black off. And what you can do is you can create a nice D-Tuna that looks kind of like a prototype, because that's what Eddie's looked like back then, just a little bit longer. So Eddie was already at that time using the D-Tuna. You know, he was already using that because towards the end of the Right Here, Right Now tour, I mean, it was perfect because they were playing Unchained, they were playing 5150, those are all drop D. So they go into balance, and now Eddie's playing Don't Tell Me, which is drop D. Amsterdam is drop D, you know, so he's still doing a lot with that, you know, tuning the low E down to D. And pretty cool. So we're in 1995, and the band's on tour, and again, this is Eddie's main guitar. He's playing this guitar all the time. This is his baby, all right? And I don't have a purple Music Man, all right, but Eddie did have, he had a bunch of purple guitars. One of the purple Music Men that he was using, you can see it actually had a Fernandez Sustainer in it. And if you go back to the Pensacola show in Florida, it was the first show of the tour. Eddie used it for the solo in that show, and I think he did Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was doing the Sustainer thing, which is pretty cool. Let's check that out. But then he never really used the Sustainer that much. It was only the first few shows, and then he kind of changed his solo around. You never saw that purple one. He brought the other purple one out, but that didn't have the Sustainer. And he brought a green one out sometimes, like this one, because the green one he had a really nice green one. Eddie's was a little darker than mine. Mine's a little bit brighter of a green. But Eddie's was darker, but he would bring this out. Sometimes he would play this for finish what you started, for whatever reason. Not quite sure. So he was big on the Music Man still. Let's see what we got for questions. R2, R3, is it Got-O or Goto? Pretty much, I don't know. I use both. I always say Got-O, Goto, Got-O. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I think it depends. You know, depends who you are and how you say it. Did Eddie design the D-Tuna? Yeah, Eddie did. He designed it with Adam Reaver from F.U. Tone. Adam was the one that actually did it with Eddie, and they came up with that. It was Ed's idea, obviously, but Adam was the one that I think brought it into fruition, mechanically wise. And Eddie would tell him what he wanted, and then, you know, Adam's been with Eddie for a long time. And then after the D-Tunas, you know, they were getting into, you know, performance-based blocks, you know, the big brass blocks, you know, you could get those. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but I mean, you know, they started releasing them as accessories and things like that. Does the toggle switch get in the way of your hand when you strum? That's a good question, Janice. How you doing, by the way? Teddy, what's up, buddy? Leon, I just want to say hi to those of you guys that jumped in since I've been talking about this stuff. The funny thing is I strum down here. I don't know if this is in tune. No, it's way out of tune, so I'm not going to play too much out of it. Let me just unplug that now. When I strum, I tend to rest my palm on the bridge, for obviously for muting and things like that. Then plus my hands are real quick to grab the bar, so I never come close. And when I tap, you know, it's the same thing. I don't come anywhere close to the switch. I always thought the Music Man was the perfect position because it's out of the way. If anything, and we'll get into the Peavies in a little bit because Eddie did did play the Peavies at the end of the balance tour. If anything, when I tap up here and I'm doing this stuff, where they moved it up here like a Les Paul, now it really gets in the way. Not so much from strumming, but like up here when you're doing this stuff, sometimes it can get in the way. So I never really understood why he moved it up there. I mean, it was his preference. That's why he did it, because that's how he plays. It just worked for him. But I always preferred it down here because for me, it's out of my way. For most people, I would say no. On the Music Man, it doesn't get in the way. Unless you're one of those players that likes to strum up here. Some people like to strum up here, like a lot of your acoustic players. So maybe then it would. But most people that have Eddie Van Halen guitars are kind of playing that way anyways. So, Rob, what settings are you using on the Yamaha? It's a great little amp. I usually run, like right now on Brown 2, I'm running my gain high, I'm running my bass about 3/4 up, my mids are about halfway, treble's about 3/4 up. I'm running a very heavy delay. I'm not running a chorus, I'm just running a delay. And then I got my guitar knob all the way up, and obviously I'm not running an input or auxiliary or anything. So that's kind of how I run mine. And it gets a really cool sound. The Brown 1 is good too, but if you want that, the Brown 2 is probably the closest you're going to get for that Van Halen sound. And there's ways to dial in better sounds too. I mean, I haven't used the presets or anything or stored anything. I just kind of run that pretty much mostly because that's just a little practice amp for me. But so Eddie was using these Music Mans. He had all kinds of colors, and that was his main guitar. So I got any pictures of that one in here? I think I do. So as we said a few minutes ago, the Balance Tour started. Oh, here we go. The Balance Tour started around March, and March of '95, and they're on the road, and it was in that time. Well, it's hard to say. The story goes that Eddie was unhappy with the production of these guitars. Now, Eddie was with Music Man officially from 91 until, well, 1990, 91, until end of 95. Okay, and the last original Eddie Van Halen Music Man rolled out of the factory of Ernie Ball in September of 95. Okay, that was when the last one rolled out. Okay. Excuse me, September of 96. September of 96 is when the last Music Man rolled out. Now, and that's when the Peavies, came into fruition, and that's when they were developed, or they were developed way before that. But so basically, Music Man did a run, and Eddie was with these guys for about 5 years, approximately 5 years, and he really liked the Music Man guitar a lot. But as we said, the story goes that he was unhappy with the amount of production because they were only making like, I think the number, and Johnny and I have talked about this. I think they only made something like I don't know, 5,000-6,000 Music Mans the whole time they were running. They only made like 1,000 guitars a year, and a lot of companies, most companies are cranking out 2,500 a month. But they were very good quality instruments, and they're one of my favorite signatures. I love the Music Mans; they're awesome. And some would argue that they're the best Eddie Van Halen signature guitar out there. I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to say they're awesome, and I love them. And sometimes I think they're the best, but then I'll pick up a Peavey and I'll be like, oh, I love this more. And then I'll pick up an EVH and, oh, I love this more. And then I'm back to the Music Man in 6 months. It kind of depends. They all have their qualities, and no doubt. But they are awesome instruments. So Eddie was unhappy with the production, and Peavey was already building his 5150 amps. And I mean, there's some talk about PRS came in, and PRS did an Eddie Van Halen model, which was never released, obviously. Steinberger was knocking on his back door. They wanted Ned Steinberger wanted the contract with Eddie, but Eddie loved the Steinbergers because he played them for years, but they just weren't his. Eddie liked the Steinbergers sometimes for certain songs, but as his main player, he liked the Floyd Roses and he wanted something different. And now he'd been playing these Music Mans, which was a big departure from the Strats that he'd played all those years, or the Super Strats, and he was really digging this 2-pickup thing. But production was down, and as Eddie says, you know, kids would call him, hey, how do I get your guitar? I've been on the waiting list for a year and I can't get it, you know. I don't know. I mean, I know Johnny Bean got his in '95, I think it was, and, you know, they were available. I'm not quite sure. There's some speculations and some rumors of a falling out with Eddie and, you know, and Sterling Ball and stuff like that. I guess we'll never know. Like I said, I've heard all kinds of rumors and whatever, but the story goes that approximately halfway through the Balance Tour, Eddie finally decided to just go with Peavey. It was a sensible decision, you know, because Peavey was doing these 5150 amps, and he was just like, awesome, you know, let's just do this. So him and Hartley Peavey had a discussion, and they decided to go ahead and release a new Eddie Van Halen signature. Let's see what we got for questions here. Yeah, the switch of the Ernie Ball Music Man never got in my way either. Same with me, Johnny, just never got in my way. I strum the acoustic way. I do strum the acoustic on my electric, the acoustic way. Yeah, me too, Janice. I try to play pretty much the same. I don't pick up a guitar and think, okay, I got to play this way, and then this guitar I got to play this way. I pretty much play, you know, I strum the same way and I pick the same way. The toggles in the Ernie Ball Music Mans are great quality as well. You're right, Teddy. They are. I've actually always preferred the actual you know, metal toggle switches on those. They're a good size. They look cool. They're very high quality. You're right. Isn't the last Ernie Ball Music Man on display in Hollywood? You know, Johnny, I think it is. I didn't see it. When I was in L.A., well, when we were at NAMM, that one day, you know, I took off and I went on a little trip with my girlfriend at the time. We went into just down Hollywood Boulevard, or Sunset Boulevard, and stopped at the Guitar Center. And they didn't have that guitar there. They don't have it in the Hard Rock. I mean, they got the Neptune guitar, but I did not see it. But I've heard there's one there, but I couldn't find it. So I think the Music Man is gone. I think it's been relocated somewhere, but I could be wrong. But I didn't see it. Oh, I'm sorry, Johnny. You're right. Johnny you got yours in '92, not '95. You're right. You said that. So I mean, Johnny didn't have any hard time finding the thing. You know, he didn't have to wait a year for it, and he's got a really cool one. His original, and the neck on Johnny's guitar is it's amazing. It's really worn in, pretty cool. Teddy. Oh, really? That's the best guitar you played? Yeah. Your friend's Ernie Ball Music Man. Stainless jumbo, 6150 frets. Nice. Jay, yeah, I know. You're right. Yeah. I got my. I think there's a little. There's a little bit of. There's a little. Yeah. We'll leave it at that. Brendan B. Squared. I play very badly whatever I pick up. I doubt that. I'm sure you played just fine. All right, so let's keep going. So halfway through the Balance Tour, Eddie seals the deal with Hartley Peavey, and you guys have seen the pictures. There's some really cool pics out there of Eddie actually designing the body with Hartley, and then it shows him getting on the plane holding the Peavey Wolfgang up. Now, here's some cool pictures in '96. Here's Eddie with this is the Humans Being guitar. This is actually the guitar that Eddie recorded Humans Being with. Now, this is before Humans Being, because this is '96. This is actually, I'm sorry, this is '95. This is 1995. Towards the end of '95. Eddie's hair was kind of going back. He was kind of getting rid of the blonde thing. But that's one of the first Peavey Wolfgangs that rolled out. All right, doesn't have EVH Wolfgang on the headstock. Just says Peavey, just like the HP2s, and it had a white toggle switch. And this is the guitar that he recorded Humans Being with. This was one of his favorites, that black one. This is in the Balance Tour. Here's a picture of Eddie playing an ivory one. We're going to talk about this. This picture is from Japan, towards the last couple shows they did. of the tour. And here's the red one. You guys have seen this. I have my replica, or it's not replica, but I have my Balance era red one here. And here's another picture of the red one. You can see the scoop on the headstock is red. Again, no EVH Wolfgang, just says PV because these are all prototypes. And here's the black one again, the Humans Being guitar, and he had an amber one. All right, he had a Sunburst one. He had a stop tailpiece. He had another amber one that said PV Wolfgang on it. Those are the quote top ones. And you know, just he had a whole bunch of them made. And basically, he loved those guitars. So I don't know exactly the time frame, but in the beginning of the Balance tour, when they would play Can't Stop Loving You, Ed would put down the regular amber Music Man, and he would play a tobacco Ernie Ball Music Man. All right, for that song, for Can't Stop Loving You. All right, I'm just talking about straps for a little bit. Here's an original Ernie Ball Music Man strap. All right, and these are the exact strap locks Eddie was using back in the 90s. Those are the same ones. They're very, very, very hard to find, and this is what they were. They're really good quality. These are the exact ones. I got these off of a very close friend of mine who you guys would know, but I'm not going to throw his name out. But these are what Eddie was using back then for strap locks. And so Eddie was still in love with Ernie Ball. But halfway through, he decides he's going to start working on the PV Wolfgang. He makes the switch. So he continues to play the Ernie Ball Music Man guitars throughout the Balance tour. Okay, so now we're in halfway through the Balance tour. The PV Wolfgang prototypes have come out. And Eddie starts using the prototypes for certain songs. He's using them for Not Enough. I'm not sure why Not Enough was the one he was using them for. And he was using the PV Wolfgangs for Can't Stop Loving You. All right. And he may have pulled them out for a couple of other songs, I don't remember. But he was using a tobacco one, an ivory one, both with stop tailpieces. And he started using another amber Ernie Ball Music Man guitar, but it was a flame top, and it had 5150 stickers on it too. Hard to tell, and it did have a signature on the headstock. And Eddie would, oh actually, here's a picture. This was his second favorite Music Man. You'll notice it's a flame top, and it does have a signature on the headstock. All right, so he started using this one. This is obviously a Balance era picture. And if you watch the Toronto show, he used it pretty much for the entire show. And as soon as the press got word that Eddie was technically with PV now, Eddie was starting to phase out the Music Mans. So on that flame top Music Man, and sometimes when he would play this, you would see Eddie, he would actually have a piece of electrical tape over the Ernie Ball Music Man logo, because technically he was with PV now, but he was still playing these guitars. So now we get to, and my time frame is pretty right here. I know I'm pretty much right on the money because I have so many different, live recordings and videos and stuff and pictures, so I can pretty much tell. You look at the beginning of the tour of Balance in March, and the end of the tour in November, when the last show was done in Hawaii after the Japan shows they did, late October and November. And then the end of the tour. So right around, in the Toronto show was done in August of '95, and Eddie was still playing the Music Man. He played that flame top one, and you can see the electrical tape on the headstock. Okay, and again he broke out the PV Wolfgang, or a PV Wolfgang, for Not Enough and Can't Stop Loving You. Then he would go back to the Music Man. So he was still waiting for a couple of different tweaks on that before he wanted to go totally live with it. So that was August. Now we get into, I want to say September, October, yeah, around that area. And there's some pictures of the Denver, Colorado show. I've never seen the video or heard any tracks from it, but there's pictures of Eddie with a hat on, these little gloves with the fingers cut out, and a flannel shirt with this guitar, playing the P.V. Wolfgang red one. And this was the first prototype, okay, that came out. As far as we know, this was the first prototype which was released, and Eddie loved it, and it became his main player. So I believe that Denver show, they called it the Snow Show because they had a big snowstorm, and they talked. It was pretty cool. I'd love to see that show on video. He just switched over to playing the PVs exclusively. Okay. So he completely retired the Music Mans. He still played them in the studio, I'm sure, whatever, probably on the road. But now he was playing the P.V. Wolfgangs. He had the Music Mans with him on tour, but he was playing the PVs as his main guitar, and this red one became his main guitar. So now he's opening and closing the show with P.V. Wolfgang. Okay, this P.V. Wolfgang, and he plays this guitar through the month of October and going into November. Okay, I have on video Eddie from Sacramento '95. It was right around Sammy's birthday, October 13th to 15th, and Eddie plays this red one for the entire show. I think he switched it out for Not Enough. He played a stop tail piece, P.V. Wolfgang, but he played this one. And again, he had a prototype D-tune on it. Actually, I think it was a black D-tune at that point. It wasn't prototype because they'd finalized them. And P.V. Wolfgang stickers. He had some yellow Music Man picks because they hadn't come out with Music Man picks yet. And this was called Zero, his Zero guitar. And I believe it had a 0 on the headstock and the body because it was a prototype, so it wasn't an official number yet. And it had the red scoop on the headstock, which I replicated. And again, it did not say EVH Wolfgang, just said PV, but I wasn't about to scratch those off. But this was his main guitar. And Eddie's was also a quilt top. This is a flame top, but it's pretty close. He was also dipping at that time he was dipping the eye bolts. You can tell they got they're the welds with the set screws and everything, but he was dipping the eye bolts in rubber plastic dip because the reason he was doing that back then is because when you would clip these on, it wouldn't make that metal on metal noise. You got a little bit of a buffer with a rubber coating. The problem is it would rub off, and then you can see all kinds of pictures of Ed's with black coating on, which he was actually doing to the Music Mans before. He was doing that for about a year. But the problem is when they just would rub around, it would wear the stuff right off. So Eddie kind of stopped doing that. But he was doing that in 94, 95. So Eddie goes to the goes to the P.V. Wolfgang guitars. So then they go over to Japan for the last little bit of the tour, and Eddie stops playing this red one and he starts playing an ivory and a black standard with a Floyd Rose. The black one was the Humans Being guitar that I showed you a couple of minutes ago. That's what that was. And then they basically finished the tour. I think the last gig was in Hawaii, and that was the end of the Balance tour. And unfortunately, just about the end of the Hagar era in the 90s. I think we get into 96 now. We get through Christmas, get into 96. Eddie's looking at having hip replacement, but he ends up losing a bunch of weight, so they put it on hold. They record Humans Being. Eddie's using the black standard we were talking about with a white toggle switch. And at this point, Balance is well over, and Sammy leaves the band in 96, and then, we all know what happened from there. But that's basically the story of the Balance guitars. Sacramento 95, I saw that show. Yeah, it was a great show. Ron, the Snow Show, yeah. I'd love to see some video of that. Can we see that? Actually, Teddy, if you go, I'll show it here in a second. But yeah, if you go back, I did show it in the beginning of this video. I showed it, but I'll show it again in a second before we go off because I'm going to do a 5150 guitar show here next week. We'll be talking about all those guitars. But yeah, I will show it again. But it is in the beginning of the video. Johnny Bean, I like the fret size in the Ernie Ball Music Mans. I do too. Let's see. Brian Hudson, I got the last Ernie Ball Music Man Amber at Guitar Center in Arlington, 93. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I know. There's so many of my guitars that are still out there somewhere, Let's see what else we got. Yeah, I thought the colored scoops were really cool too, Brian. They did, on that amber one, he had an amber colored scoop. On this red one, he had the red one. I thought that would have been kind of a neat little feature to have on him. I don't know why they ever got away from that. I'm not sure. Humans Being was one of my favorite tracks. Mine too. I love that song. Never understood why Hagar was so spiteful towards that song. I mean, I know the story, but that's all one of the best. I don't know. I think it was. I think it had a lot to do with Sammy was getting ready to have a baby, and according, Ed and Al wanted him in the studio, and they were starting to really bang heads. And I don't necessarily think he was spiteful to the song. I just think he was really getting frustrated, as were Ed and Al. And again, we'll never know. But that was Humans Being was the last song they recorded that we know of, I should say, that they recorded and released. And right after that was when the split happened. I never forget that day. Roth's back in the band. It's all over MTV and everything. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. Roth's back. I mean, I loved Hagar, but it was, I'd never seen him with Roth. So, but yeah, I think it was more of a case of they were just having a fallout, and that was just one of the last songs they did. So maybe that's why. But yeah, that's a great song. What color is the Pacer and the full-size Kramer at? That is I think it's hard to tell, Teddy, but I think it's a purple one, but it's not the regular purple one that he taped up, because it's got a rosewood neck, and it's not a Rockinger bridge. It's a purple one, a black one in the middle, and then it looks like kind of like a brownish, kind of woodish, kind of sunbursty kind of one, but I believe that's purple. Basically that's it for the Peavies. That's pretty much what the story goes. I mean, like I said, Eddie was getting that really awesome sound out of him. Oh, this one is in tune. Great guitars, and I've owned, I bet you I've probably owned 20 PV Wolfgangs in my life. Right now I have 3. I have this one, I have my Tobacco Sustainer one, which you guys have seen in my purple standard. I've owned a couple of the black patent pending ones, like Eddie's Humans Being guitar. I've owned a couple of the Ivories. I've owned, what other colors have I owned? A couple other purples. Never owned a green one or anything. Never owned a sunburst one. Owned a couple of reds. Like I said, a couple of purples, a bunch of blacks, and actually owned an amber one time too. That was a beautiful guitar. I've never actually owned any quilt top Peavies. Those were really hard to get. The first one I got was the patent pending black one in 1997. Not because it was a Humans Being one. It was the only one that came out, and I wanted it. And a guitar shop about 2.5 hours away from my house. I knew the guy, and he was a PV dealer, and he's like, "I'm getting a black one." I'm like, "I want it." And of course, at that time, I was newly married, didn't have a lot of money, and the only one it took me like months to save up for it. I think I took a personal loan out to get it. And my wife, ex-wife now, but wife at the time, was like, she was supportive. She's like, all right, that's your bag, you can do it. And I mean, at the time, I just started painting all these guitars and everything. And so that was my first EVH signature. I never had a Music Man or anything like that. But I love that guitar. It was a great guitar. But I never was able to find a quilt top one. And then, I think they only did the quilt tops for a very short period of time because PV couldn't find the right maple tops for them for the quilts. So they ended up just doing flame tops, which were fine too. But if you find a PV Wolfgang with a quilt top, they will run you a little extra dough. But they are pretty cool. Teddy, do you know if the scoop was painted or stained? I don't know, but one thing I do know, it was I can't give his name out, but I know the guy that owns Eddie's original red one. I've talked to him. This exact guitar that he played in Balance, Eddie gave it to someone, and I know who. I've never seen it, and I've never met the guy, but I talked to him on Messenger and Facebook and whatever. So I know the guy that actually owns it. I will ask him, but I do know it was a translucent color. So I'm thinking it was painted on with a translucent paint and then clear coated. I'm almost positive it was a paint job, not a dye or anything. It wasn't like the body; it was different. But this one's painted on. It is a translucent color, but it came out really nice. But I think Eddie's was painted on the scoop. But again, it was a prototype one. But I'll find out for sure. I like the quilts, but only the ones that were good. There were some real crappy quilts out there that didn't even look like quilt tops. And I agree with you, Teddy. Those ones I wasn't a big fan of. But anyways, let me show you guys real quick because Teddy wanted to see it. And again, understand, we're going to do a video on this later because we're going to do it on the 5150 guitars. This is the freshly painted 1984, and it's got some relic on it. Hubbard did this, Chris Hubbard. And it came out awesome. Really came out awesome. He even nailed the overspray. And again, I mean, I did this guitar the last time, and I liked my paint job, but it's not as good as what Hubbs did. You know, it's got the 2 stars in here. Whoops, where is it? Wrong side. It's got the 2 stars in here like Ed's. Can't quite arc that the way. There we go. And the back, you know, it's a Z 1984. Hubbs did a really good job. It's got the right neck plate, B4186. That's the number on the original. And this is the 86 version, or the Good Enough guitar, where Eddie had the black Floyd on. Right now it's got a Steinberger knob on it, which is what this is. It did not have the Steinberger knob on in 86. This is more like what the guitar looks like today, as far as we know anyways. Wolfgang owns it. And it's got the black hardware for the retainer and the nut, and then chrome tuners, chrome shallers or gatos, I'm not sure. But yeah, so this is it. So we will be doing a video on the 5150 guitars, the 5150 tour guitars, I should say, and we'll do a whole thing on, you know, the 5150, the Steinberger, that guitar. The Kramer backups, like the 918V here. You know, we'll talk about all these guitars, because that's going to be my next video. The guitars of 5150. And today was the guitars of Balance. So let's just see what we got for questions, and then we'll call it. What are the differences in the Ernie Ball Music Man and the PV guitars, Leon? Well, the biggest difference is the neck, in my opinion. The neck on the Music Man guitars is a lot thinner feeling. It's more of a lower profile, and the story goes that the Music Man necks were the same necks as on the Kramer 5150, because when they made these necks, they did a digitalized, computerized version of these, and they copied that neck. So that's what gave you the kind of worn-in feel. But it's an asymmetrical neck, maple neck, obviously. It's a one-piece neck, I believe, and it's very thin. And I can't tell you the dimensions because I don't know. Toggle switches down on the bottom. The top is toggle switches down on the bottom. Only has a tone knob. Pickups are DiMarzio. Basically pickups, DiMarzio tone zones, and an Aaron Norton, I believe, in the neck. The body shape is a little different. The top horn is a little more rounded. It's a flat top. It's not an arch top. And 4x2 headstock. Other than that, it's you know, some cosmetic stuff. It's a pretty similar guitar to the PV Wolfgang. So they came out with the PVs, and their main standard guitars, they came with a tone knob, which was something apparently Eddie didn't want, but Hartley ended up winning that battle because It was more aesthetic looking. I guess it looked better to them. So, but I never use it anyways. Matter of fact, all my tone knobs, I snip the wire in the back so it doesn't do anything because I never use the tone knob. They were arch tops, so it's a carved top. Toggle switch was moved up here, and it's opposite from a Les Paul. So up is your bridge and down is your neck. Okay, and that was so Eddie didn't hit it when he was doing his tapping. Okay, that's why he did that. But still, it gets in my way up here. The necks on the Peavies, I love them. They're great. And I can't say enough about them, but they're a lot thicker. They're very baseball batish feeling, which some people don't like. Now, Eddie was going through a change again, so Eddie was like, he wanted to try this, and he played these necks for a long time. They're a lot thicker, the necks, okay? And it's a 3x3 headstock, okay? And the body shape is just a little bit different. They kind of blew the horn out a little bit more here. But, I mean, they're very, very similar guitars. They really are. They're very similar. If anything, the Peavey Wolfgang is an evolution. I don't particularly like that word, but is an evolution of the Music Man. They changed some things, enhanced some things, if you will. I mean, some people would say the Music Man's a better guitar, and I don't dispute that. It's a preference thing. They feel a little differently to me because the neck is the biggest thing. But I love the Peavies and I love the Music Man. So those are your basic differences. The pickups on the Peavies are a little bit hotter than the Music Man's. The Music Man pickups were actually DiMarzio's. And the story goes, when Eddie left Music Man and went to Peavey, he thought he owned the rights to those pickups, but he didn't, so he couldn't take them with him, so they had to design the Peavies. And they're their own design, just like the EVHs, whereas the Music Man's basically just were DiMarzio's. But they're a little bit hotter sounding than the Music Man's. And the EVH guitars pickups now are a little hotter than the Peavey, so he's definitely gone a little hotter and a little crunchier with the sound over the years. Chris, yeah, thankfully my wife never said no. My ex-wife never did either, so. And now I just go freaking hog wild and don't have any money because I buy guitars. I'm trying to pull things back. I have 33 guitars right now, so I think I'm doing pretty good. Let's see what else we got. Teddy, yeah, I like the Black Floyd, right? Brian. Hey, Hallface, what's going on? No problem. Check it out. But that's pretty much the show, guys. And like I said, I thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a good week. This is a balance show. For those of you guys that jumped in late, go back to the beginning, rewind it. We talked mainly about the balance sound and the balanced guitars. And like I said, in a couple of weeks, or not even a couple of weeks, and hopefully a couple of days, up to a week, I'm going to be doing a special show on the 5150 guitars. We'll talk a little bit about the sound too, but the 5150 tour guitars, okay? And what Ed was doing back then, because we're going to jump back to the Kramers. And then I'm going to do another show on the guitars of Fair Warning, which would be kind of fun. We'll talk about how the Circles guitar was made, what that was made out of, which guitar was that. The Rude guitar, is that the guitar that was, you know, the unfinished body on the floor, the 2-inch body, you know, and one of the picks. We'll talk about all that. Just to recap again, that Wet Dry Wet sound was Balance. The biggest of the sounds of the Van Halen catalog, in my opinion. And the biggest, I mean the biggest, like, majestic, harmonized, heavy chorus processed kind of delay sound, you know, with a detuned harmonizer type sound. Really cool sound. My favorite, not everybody's, but definitely a very non-classic Van Halen sound, but a very interesting sound. And if you listen to some of the classic Van Halen songs, like Panama, Ain't Talking About Love, even Unchained in '93 they did, You Really Got Me, you know, songs like that, which are awesome. Some of my favorite Van Halen songs, they just sounded incredible, you know, like that, with that big sound. But again, Eddie's always changing. Music Man guitars in Balance, many different colors. And halfway through the Balance tour, Eddie sealed the deal with Peavey. and started phasing out the Music Mans, went to the Peavies, and then by the end of the Balance tour, by the end, was playing them exclusively. And the last thing I'm going to say is this particular guitar, not this one, but Eddie's, the Amber 5150 Music Man, the prototype, you know, with no signature on the headstock. This guitar, to my knowledge, is still today, up to today, is still one of Eddie's go-to guitars, and it hangs right on his wall. It's still there. There's updated pictures of 5150, and Eddie still has that guitar close by, as he does the 5150. So I'm sure he doesn't play it all the time, but that guitar was very special to him, as was the 5150, as was the Frank. And I still say Eddie keeps that close by. It's not wrapped up in a case, and I think that's because every once in a while he picks it up, because it just got that mojo to it, you know. But Johnny, just found a lost 1998 interview posted. Oh, cool! I'll check that out. Thanks, Johnny. I definitely want to check that out. So, anyways, thanks, Brian. Appreciate you guys jumping in, and I just want to give a shout out to my good friend Johnny Bean of the Johnny Bean Show. Dave Nesdahl, my good friend, who's going to be visiting me here at my place next Friday, a week from today. Him and his lovely bride-to-be, and their little dog Snickers is going to come hang out, so we'll make sure we do a show, and maybe we'll do one of Johnny's shows too. Jay Hannon, good guy, awesome friend, funny dude. Thanks for jumping in, Jay. I want to give a shout-out to those three guys, Johnny, Dave, and Jay. It's always awesome being on your show. We have a lot of fun. John Mancuda, he's not here, I don't think, but really cool guy. I want to give a shout out to Eric. I want to give a shout out to Jimmy Carr, Mark Kazansky, all my buddies. I just want to say thank you for jumping in. Everybody in the chat, Teddy, Chris, Brian, Leon, everybody. Fender Guru, Janice, everybody. If I missed your name, it's not because I don't care about you. Just there's so many of you. Thank you very much for watching. Like I said, if you didn't see the whole show, jump back, check it out. I figured today would be a good day to do Balance because I kind of got the Eddie Balance color going again. Figured I'd try that after a few years. But we'll see you guys real soon. And take care. Have a good weekend, guys. Thanks.